The bell above the door gave its usual bright little jingle, the one that always sounded too cheerful for a store full of people trying not to be seen. It was February of 2010, gray slush piled in the parking lot outside, and the fluorescent lights inside made everything look a shade paler than it deserved. Skin, satin, even the red Valentine's displays we hadn't bothered to take down yet. I was halfway through refolding a stack of camisoles that never stayed folded when the door chimed again, sharper this time, like it had been yanked too hard. I glanced up with my standard customer service smile already loaded in my face, ready for a bored boyfriend or a woman hunting for the one bra that wouldn't betray her under a new dress. Instead, a man stepped in like he'd been pushed. He was mid-40s, maybe 46 or 47, with a weathered face that looked used to wind and long commutes. Not handsome in the polished way, handsome in the still has kind eyes even after life way. His hair was dark with a few strands of silver at the temples, and he wore a heavy work coat zipped all the way up even though the store was warm. His shoulders were hunched as if he could shrink himself smaller by force. In one hand, he clutched a plastic bag so tight the handles were stretched white. He didn't browse. He didn't pretend to browse. He came straight to the counter and set the bag down like it was burning him. "I need to return this," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it was urgent, pressed flat like paper. All of it. I'd been working retail long enough to recognize a particular kind of panic. Not the kind caused by a late gift or a missed sale, but the kind caused by being caught by your own choices. It sits differently in the body. It makes people move like they're fleeing a fire no one else can see. "Okay," I said gently, reaching for the bag. "Do you have your receipt?" His hands hovered, then withdrew. His eyes flitted toward the windows, toward the aisle, toward the door, like he expected someone to walk in and point at him. "Yeah," he said, and dug into his wallet with stiff fingers. He slid a receipt across the counter. It was creased and softened, like it had been folded and unfolded a dozen times. I glanced at the date. January, about a month ago. I kept my face calm. "All right," I said, the same way I would for anyone returning the wrong size. "Let's see what we've got." When I opened the bag, the smell of fabric, new nylon, that faint chemical sweetness, rose up. Inside were a few items still in their packaging: a pair of sheer pantyhose, a couple pairs of plain panties, a camisole in a soft dove gray, and a small satin slip folded so neatly it looked like it had never been unfolded. Nothing flashy, nothing costumey, just quiet softness. His gaze locked onto my hands, and I saw his throat work as he swallowed. "Unopened," I noted, because that mattered for returns. "That's good. We can do—" "I don't want store credit," he cut in too fast. "I want it gone." There was a desperation in the way he said gone, like the items weren't fabric but evidence. Like if they left his life, whatever they meant about him would leave too. I paused with the slip in my hands. A script ran through my head. The standard return policy, the friendly questions. But his face was tight, and his eyes looked watery in a way he was trying to bully back. "I can refund it to your original payment method," I said. "That's fine. I just need to confirm everything's—" "It is," he said. Then softer, as if he'd realized he sounded harsh, "It is. I didn't do anything." I nodded like I understood exactly what he meant, like I'd heard that sentence before and didn't need him to finish it. I set the slip down carefully as if the gentleness might transfer. "What's your name?" I asked, glancing at the receipt. He hesitated. "Dale," he said. "Okay, Dale," I replied, and I made it warm on purpose. Saying someone's name is a small way of bringing them back into their body. "I'm Brittany." His eyes flicked up at my name tag, then away, like eye contact might be too much. I started scanning the items, the register beeping in steady, indifferent tones. Normally, I would have chatted, weather, sales, anything to fill the silence. But Dale looked like sound might crack him open, so I kept it practical, quiet. Then I made the mistake of saying, "Was there something wrong with them?" It came out automatically, a reflex from 1,000 returns. The instant it left my mouth, I saw his shoulders jerk, like I'd jabbed him. His face went red, then pale, his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. "No," he said. "Nothing's wrong. It's—" He stopped. His eyes squeezed shut for a second. When he opened them, they were bright with something he hated. "I just can't." The store around us kept humming. A couple of women wandered near the bras, laughing at something on a phone. The music overhead was a slow, glossy pop song that felt insulting in its cheerfulness. My coworker in the back room laughed at a joke I couldn't hear. The world kept being normal, and Dale looked like normal was about to swallow him. In retail, you learn early when to pretend you didn't hear something. You learn how to let people keep their secrets intact. That's usually kindness. But I'd also learned something else. Sometimes kindness is not pretending. Sometimes kindness is saying, I see you and you're safe. Dale's eyes were fixed on the bag now, like he couldn't bear to look at the items even as he demanded their removal. His breathing was quick, shallow, the kind people do right before tears. I lowered my voice. Dale, I said softly, you're not in trouble here. His jaw trembled. I shouldn't have done it, he whispered, and the words sounded like confession, not shopping. I glanced around, making sure no one was close enough to overhear. The intimates counter had its own little pocket of space, a half wall with displays that made it feel slightly private. I leaned forward just a bit, not invading him, just meeting him halfway. Do you want to do the return? I asked carefully. Or do you want to talk for a second before we decide? He stared at me like I'd offered him water in the desert, and he didn't trust it. I just. He broke off, lips pressing tight. I need it gone, he repeated, but his voice was thinner now, less certain. I continued scanning, slow and steady, letting the beeps create a kind of heartbeat in the air. One item, another. My hands stayed gentle, unhurried. It sounds silly, but sometimes the way you touch something tells someone how you see it. If I handled the fabric like it was shameful, I'd confirm his worst fear. So I handled it like it was normal. As I worked, I said, Can I ask you something? You don't have to answer if you don't want to. His eyes darted to mine, then away, a small nod. Did something happen? I asked. Like, did someone find them? He shook his head quickly. No, no one found anything. His voice dropped. It's worse. I found them. I didn't pretend not to understand. I let the meaning settle. He found them, meaning he'd woken up from whatever relief they'd offered and been flooded with disgust at himself. I had been around enough human beings by then to know shame wasn't logical. It didn't care about facts. It didn't care that no one was being harmed. It didn't care that a grown man could buy whatever fabric he wanted. Shame was a predator that lived in the dark, and it loved cycles. What do you mean? I asked gently. His cheeks shone slightly, like he'd gone hot. I don't know why I do it, he said, and the words came out rough, scraped raw. I'm fine. I have a job. I have responsibilities. I'm not. He stopped as if he didn't know what he wasn't. And then I get this itch, this need, like I can't relax unless I. He swallowed hard. Unless I buy stuff like that. Try it on, feel it, and it's good for a minute. It's like I can breathe. He inhaled sharply, like the admission was both relief and poison. And then, he said, voice cracking, afterward, I feel like I'm sick, like I'm disgusting, like I've done something that proves I'm wrong. And I get rid of it all. I throw it away. I hide it. He pressed his fingertips to his eyes, hard. I thought returning it would be better than the garbage. At least someone could use it, but I can't keep it. I can't be that guy. Something in my chest tightened with recognition, not because I lived his exact story, but because I knew the shape of what he was describing. The swing between relief and self-punishment. The way people try to cleanse themselves of a feeling by destroying the thing that triggered it, like you could undo a need by erasing its evidence. Dale, I said quietly, there's a word for what you're describing. His eyes snapped to mine. Wary. What? I hesitated. I didn't want to label him like a diagnosis. I didn't want to give him a word that would become another weapon against himself, but the word might also be a map. Some people call it a purge, I said softly, when they buy things that make them feel comforted. And then later shame hits and they panic and get rid of it all. His face went still, the way people go still when a private pattern suddenly has a name. Purge, he repeated, barely audible. I nodded. It's common, I added carefully. Not the exact details for everyone, but the cycle. Relief, then shame, then trying to erase it. His mouth opened and closed like he didn't know what to do with the fact that he wasn't the only one. I'm not crazy? He asked. My throat tightened. No, I said. You're not crazy. He looked down at the counter, shoulders trembling. It feels like I am, he whispered. I finished scanning the last item and set the receipt printer to work. Paper slid out with a cheerful whir, as if the machine didn't know it was printing something tender. I can do the return, I said, keeping it steady. That's your choice. But can I say something first? Just as A person? He nodded once, quick. I don't think comfort makes you bad, I said. I don't think softness makes you disgusting. I think the shame is loud, but it doesn't mean you did something wrong. His eyes watered again, and this time he didn't blink it away fast enough. A tear slipped down his cheek. He swiped at it angrily, embarrassed. Sorry, he muttered. Don't apologize, I said immediately. You're allowed to have feelings in a store. It happens. A sound that was almost a laugh escaped him, but it was more like a sob that found humor by accident. He shook his head. Jesus, this is humiliating. I wanted to tell him that humiliation only thrives when you're alone, that the moment someone looks at you without disgust, it loses some power. But I didn't want to preach. I wanted to keep him grounded. Do you have someone you can talk to about this? I asked gently. A therapist? A friend who won't judge? He flinched at the word therapist like it meant he was broken. No, he said. I can't. I'm married. The last word came out like a lock turning. I have kids. There it was again, the fear that wanting softness meant failing at manhood, failing at fatherhood, failing at the role he'd been assigned. Being married and having kids doesn't cancel out what you're feeling, I said. And it doesn't make you dangerous. It just means you're scared of what it might mean. He stared at me, breathing hard through his nose like he was trying to keep himself from falling apart. I slid the return receipt across the counter but didn't push the bag away yet. I left the items where they were, visible, ordinary, not hidden. Sometimes shame wants you to cover everything up. The pop music overhead shifted to another song. A customer walked by with a stack of sweaters, completely unaware that a man was confessing his private war at a lingerie counter. Dale swallowed. I don't want to lose my family, he said, voice low. I don't want to be, I don't know, some kind of joke or pervert. The word pervert came out like he'd been called it in his own head for years. I took a breath, choosing my words with care. I'm not here to tell you what it means, I said. Only you can decide that. But I can tell you this. Wanting fabric that feels nice doesn't make you a pervert. It makes you a person with a nervous system that likes comfort. He looked at me like he'd never heard anyone talk about it that way. So plain, so uncharged. I don't even do anything, he said, as if he needed me to absolve him. I just wear it. And then I'm calm. And then I hate myself. The cycle again. Relief, shame, purge. What if, I said slowly, the part that wears it is trying to help you, and the part that hates you is just scared? His eyes squeezed shut, and another tear escaped. His shoulders lifted and dropped in one shaky breath. I don't know how to stop, he whispered. I didn't want to promise him I could fix it. I couldn't. But I could offer him a small interruption, one moment where he didn't have to punish himself immediately. You don't have to stop today, I said. You don't have to decide everything today. Today you can just breathe. He opened his eyes, red-rimmed. What do I do then? He asked, and the way he said then made it sound like he'd been living in a constant after. I glanced at the bag. If you want to return it, we'll return it, I said. If you want to keep it, you can keep it. But I wonder if the best choice for you isn't about the items at all. It might be about having someone to talk to who won't shame you. He swallowed. Like a therapist, he said, resigned. Like a therapist, I agreed. One who understands shame cycles, someone who can help you find a way to feel calm without having to punish yourself afterward. He looked down. I can't let anyone know, he whispered. You don't have to tell anyone you don't trust, I said. Therapy is private. You can start there. You can say, I have a habit that makes me feel ashamed and I want help. You don't even have to name the items right away if you can't. His brow furrowed, like the idea of control, of pacing was new to him. I watched him breathe, slower now, like the panic had eased a notch. The store lights reflected off the glossy packaging, turning it into something almost pretty, almost neutral. He pointed at the slip, but his finger hovered above it like it might bite. I bought that, he said, voice small, because it looked peaceful. The word peaceful made my throat tighten again. It wasn't about sex. It wasn't about trickery. It was about a man longing for a sensation that felt like exhaling. I believe you, I said. He let out a laugh that was mostly disbelief. My wife would kill me. Maybe, I said carefully, or maybe she would be surprised, but either way, you don't have to jump to that conversation right now. You can start with someone safe and professional. He stared at me for a long time. Then his eyes flicked toward the door again, like the old panic was trying to come back. Can you just do the return? He asked. I need it out of my car before I chicken out. I nodded. Okay, I said, we'll do it. I processed the refund, The register chirped, the drawer popped, the receipt printed. I handed him the slip of paper and kept my face gentle. Refund will show up in a few business days, I said. He took the receipt, fingers trembling. Then he looked at the empty counter like he'd expected to feel immediate relief and instead felt hollow. Before he could leave, I said softly, Dale? He paused, hand on the bag handle, now empty. If this happens again, I said, try this. Before you get rid of everything, give yourself one day, just one. Don't punish yourself immediately. Let the urge to purge pass through first. And if you can, use that day to reach out for help. He stared at me, jaw clenched, like he was holding back another wave. Then he nodded once, fast, and his eyes went shiny again. Thank you, he managed. I watched him leave, shoulders still hunched but his steps less frantic. The bell jingled behind him, bright and oblivious. I stood there for a moment with my hands on the counter, heart thudding, feeling the odd aftermath of being someone's emergency exit. I didn't know if he'd actually seek help. I didn't know if he'd go home and hate himself anyway. I didn't know if the word purge would become a weapon or a flashlight for him. But I knew this. I'd seen shame cycle up close, and I'd seen how quickly it could turn a person into their own enemy. And I'd felt in the space of a few minutes how kindness, plain, steady, unshocked kindness, could interrupt it. Not erase it, not cure it, but interrupt it. Like stepping between someone and the reflex to hurt themselves. A month passed, then two, and one rainy afternoon in April, the bell above the door jingled again, and I looked up expecting another regular. It was Dale. He walked in more slowly this time. He still wore the work coat, still kept his shoulders a little tight, but his eyes didn't have that frantic, hunted look. He held nothing in his hands except a small folded paper. He approached the counter and stopped. Hi, he said. Hi, I replied, keeping my voice warm but not overly familiar, letting him choose the distance. How are you? He swallowed. Better, he said, and the word sounded cautious, like he didn't want to jinx it. He held up the folded paper. I did what you said. My heart lifted, careful. You waited? I asked. He nodded. It hit me, he admitted, cheeks coloring. The need. I went to buy, and then the shame came, and I remembered one day. He let out a breath that was half laugh. It was the longest day of my life. I smiled softly. But you made it. I did, he said, and his eyes shone with something like pride, small but real. And I called a therapist. My chest tightened, not with sadness this time, but with relief. That's huge, I said. He shrugged, embarrassed by his own courage. I didn't say everything, he confessed. Not yet, but I said I had a cycle, and she knew the word. She said it happens. I nodded. It does. He looked down at the counter, then back up. I'm not here to return anything, he said quickly, as if he needed to make that clear. He held up the paper again. Can you tell me which ones were the ones you said were sturdy? The pantyhose? The ones that don't roll? The question landed like a quiet revolution. He wasn't asking to erase, he was asking to choose. I kept my smile gentle, steady, the way you smile at someone learning to walk again. Yeah, I said. I can help with that. As I led him to the hosiery wall, I thought about all the people who came into stores like mine carrying secret battles. How many of them were living in cycles they didn't have names for, how many of them thought they were alone. The word purge had been new to me that day, but the pattern wasn't. Shame was old. Shame was ancient. Shame convinced people they had to be rough, hard, unbreakable. It convinced them softness was dangerous. But I'd watched a man choose a different ending, one day at a time, and standing under fluorescent lights beside a wall of pantyhose, I felt something that surprised me with its simple, stubborn sweetness. Hope. Not the dramatic kind, the kind that looks like a single day's pause, a phone call, a man walking back into a store not to destroy a piece of himself but to take care of it,